Hello, my darling cherubs! I got all dressed up for our little presentation today because I am so excited about punctuating dialogue. And I noticed that we need some work in that department. So I've been reading your short stories that you wrote for Writing Workshop, and they have been, in many ways, supremely super duper awesome, and I'm super proud of you. But one area where I'm seeing us in need of some work is in the area of punctuating dialogue. When you don't punctuate your dialogue properly, there are a few problems. One, it makes me cry a lot because I'm just like, why? Why? But secondly, it's problematic because your reader can get really confused really easily when it comes to understanding who's speaking or what an author is trying to do with a certain line of speech. So you really want to be so careful about making sure that you're punctuating dialogue properly because you create a sense of clarity for your reader. They get what's going on because you've punctuated it the way you should have. So we're going to go through some of the rules that you follow to properly punctuate dialogue. And you're going to love them because they're awesome. And you're hopefully going to take some notes because that'd be really smart of you. Maybe even like those cool Cornell notes we talked about in that last screencast because, yeah, they rock. But it is up to you. You will, however, be responsible for this information because there will be on your day 3 or 4 language arts class, depending on what period you have me, you'll be taking a short assessment where you'll have to punctuate the dialogue and basically everything in a paragraph of text. And we're going to give some practice opportunities today, and we're going to talk about the rules, and it's going to be awesome. So here we go. Okay, rule number 1. It's important to put quotation marks around any direct quotation. By direct quotation, I mean that you are taking the exact words that someone used and putting quotes around them. So here I've given you an example of both an indirect quotation and a direct one. So with indirect quotes, you're basically summarizing what somebody said, but not putting it in the exact words they used. So if I said to you, my mom said I have to go to soccer practice even though I'm sick. I'm telling you what my mom said, but I'm not telling you it in the exact words that she said it. With a direct quotation, I say, you may be sick, but you're still going to soccer practice, said Mom. In that case, I'm giving you the exact words that Mom used when she told me I had to go to soccer practice even though I was sick. So that has to go in quotations. Bueno? Bueno. Okay, so rule number 2. A direct quotation always starts with a capital letter. So whether you start a direct quotation in the middle of the sentence, like in this first example, or at the beginning, like in this second, it doesn't matter. You always need to capitalize that first word. So if it says, CJ shouted, I'll see you at the game, I'll should be capitalized, even though it's in the middle of a sentence. First of all, because I'll is always capitalized, but second of all, because it's the start of a direct quotation. That second one is easier. Do you know when it starts? Asked Ryan. Because in that case, you can see that the do is not only the first word of the quote, but also the first word of the sentence. So you would capitalize it regardless. I noticed that some of you had this tendency to go over here to where it says asked Ryan and you would put a capital A. I think probably because you put this question mark here and you thought, oh, well, question marks go at the end of sentences, so I've got to make a capital A. But in the case of dialogue, that's kind of an exception to that rule. And so you need to have a lowercase a. Or if this said, it'd be a lowercase s. All right. Ready? Rule number 3. So rule number 3, when a quotation is interrupted by a speaker tag or by some other text that's not part of the quote, the second part of the quotation is not capitalized. So now we're really getting complicated here. So if you look at that first sentence, why, inquired the teacher, aren't you in science class right now? So let's break this down. The teacher is saying the sentence, why aren't you in science class right now? But the writer of this dialogue, for whatever reason, decided to interrupt the sentence the teacher said with, inquired the teacher. So we capitalize the W and Y because it's the beginning of the sentence and the beginning of the quotation. So we have why, inquired the teacher. And then we go to, aren't you in science class right now? And you'd think, oh, that's the start of a direct quotation. We have to capitalize the A and aren't. But really, it's not the start of the direct quotation. It's a continuation. So it started over here with why, and then it continued into why aren't you? So since it's not the exact beginning of the quotation, it's lowercase. Notice also the commas. We'll talk more about those later, but just notice them for now. Why, comma, inquired the teacher, comma, aren't you in science class right now? Then we have, I'm supposed to take a test, Izzy sniffled, but I didn't study. Izzy never studies. So again, I'm supposed to take a test, Izzy sniffled, but I didn't study. That but is lowercase, while the I'm at the beginning is uppercase or capitalized. That's because it's one sentence that she's saying and it's just interrupted with this speaker tag. I'm supposed to take a test, but I didn't study. That's what she's saying. But because we put that interruption speaker tag in there, it seems confusing, more confusing than it is. So the truth is, it's just the sentence, I'm supposed to take a test, but I didn't study. The first word is I'm, and so the I'm gets capitalized and nothing else. Okay, rule number 4. Rule number 4, all punctuation marks that are part of the dialogue go inside the quotation marks. So, if this is true, which it is, that means that when we have a question and it's part of the quotation. So if Josh is saying, are you out of your mind? That's part of what he's saying, right? It's a question. So the question mark has to go inside the quotation marks. It's part of what he's saying. Are you out of your mind? I think I just might be, Owen exclaimed. If Owen is exclaiming, it's an interjection for one. Show excitement or emotion. They're generally set apart from a sentence by an exclamation point or by a comma when the feeling's not as strong. So when Owen says, I think I just might be, that's an interjectory statement, which means that he's got to keep that exclamation point inside the quotation marks. It's part of his statement. It's part of his direct speech. If it ends with a period, for that last one, for example, well, I don't want to be there when this plan blows up in your face, said Josh. You would think, oh, well, I just put a question mark in the middle of a sentence. I just put an exclamation point in the middle of a sentence. Why not put a period at the middle of a sentence? Because you can't. Just the rules, you can't. So when that happens and you have something like said Josh at the end and the word face is not the very, very end of the sentence, it's just the end of the dialogue, you put a comma instead of a period. And you still put it inside of the quotation marks. Basically, everything goes inside the quotation marks, including the punctuation that ends the dialogue or the quote. Hopefully that made sense. We're on to rule number 5. What a great number, 5. Rule 5. Oh my gosh, I totally just told you this rule. I gave it away. Free foreshadowing. Do not put a period after a quotation if it's followed by something like she said, he stated, she responded, anything like that. You use a comma. The only time you can use a period is to end a sentence. Not to end a dialogue line, to end a sentence. So if I say, I'm sick and tired of your whining, JC, if that were a sentence in itself, I'm sick and tired of your whining, JC, and that was it, I'd put a period. But because it's a line of dialogue and afterward it says, said Miss Whitman, I changed that period to a comma. Well, I'm sick and tired of your class, JC replied. JC, how dare you? Well, I'm sick and tired of your class, comma, JC replied. Notice still the commas are inside of the quotation marks, and there's a comma instead of a period because we've got that speaker tag, JC replied. Last one, Miss Whitman looked at JC, shocked, and simply said, comma, wow. And again, obviously wow was in quotation marks. Now in the case of that last one, do you see how, because I said wow at the end of the sentence, it gets a period? Because it's not only the end of the dialogue line, but it's also the end of the sentence. So that's the only time when you would have a period at the end of your dialogue. Rule number 6, new speaker equals new paragraph. I cannot tell you how many people did not pay attention to this rule in their stories. If the speaker changes, you must start a new paragraph. Sometimes you're going to feel really silly doing that because you're like, why would I indent one line after I just indented something else? But if you look at the books you read, if you look at the dialogue components, you will find that that's how it works. That's the rule. So in this case, we've got a dialogue between Kevin and John. This is a real dialogue. It actually happened. Kevin has some weird dreams. Last night, I dreamt that I ate a giant marshmallow, said Kevin. Was it a lot like the time you dreamed you were eating your way through a giant pile of butterscotch pudding? Asked John. Scarier, Kevin exclaimed. Kevin explained. This time I woke up and my pillow was gone. So let's take a look at this. First of all, every time the speaker changes from Kevin to John and back to Kevin, we indent and start a new paragraph. That's the big rule here. But I also wanted to point out in that third paragraph, when it says scarier, Kevin explained, yes. This time I woke up and my pillow was gone. So I know a couple of slides ago I mentioned to you that you don't capitalize the second half of dialogue if it's interrupted with a speaker tag. So we have scarier, Kevin explained. This time I woke up and my pillow was gone. So what I taught you before was that you would say scarier, comma, and then this would be lowercase. But in this case, scarier and this are two separate sentences. So Kevin would say scarier. If this were just a line written, it would say scarier, period. This time, comma, I woke up and my pillow was gone. Exclamation point. So because scarier is the end of a sentence and this is the start of a new sentence, you capitalize the T in this. Super lame. It's like a rare exception to the rule. So that's the only time when, if dialogue is interrupted by a speaker tag like this, Kevin explained, you still capitalize the T coming after it, or the letter coming right after it. Okay. Last of all, your assignment. Here you have an utter disaster of a paragraph. I've made Haley and Milan my lovely subjects for it, and Milan. Haley and Milan are my subjects, and there's a paragraph that I've written about them and their feelings about going to the movies, and it's a mess. There are no quotation marks, no commas, no capitalization where it should be, and no end punctuation. It's miserable. And so your job, now that you've watched this video and learned all these rules, and guess what? You can totally go back and watch it again if you want, you lucky, lucky children. So you can fix this paragraph so that it is written correctly. I would like you to do it. I guess I'm okay if you do it online on your Chromebooks, but you need to write it out properly for me, and we're going to be looking at it together at the beginning of class in next language arts period. So make sure that you fix it up and rewrite it for yourself. You can absolutely do it in your notebook too, and with your hand. I would actually suggest doing it by hand if you have your notebook or have a piece of paper you can do it on, but you can do it on your Chromebook if you choose. So I'll read it to you just the way it's written. So if I can read it without breathing, I might have to do that. I love to go to the movies, Haley said, but there is nothing good showing at all. I know, Milan replied. It is crazy. How many silly romantic comedies they churn out. Tell me about it, Haley exclaimed. If I see one more stupid Kate Hudson, Matthew McConaughey puke fest, I will personally poke my eye out with an ice pick and perform my own lobotomy. I think that may be a little bit outrageous, Milan pointed out, but I can get behind the sentiment. My big beef, though, is the atrocious horror movies lately. What happened to scaring us rather than grossing us out? Would you rather go out to dinner tonight, Haley asked. Sounds like a plan. Milan agreed. They left to go to the corner deli. Oh my gosh. Okay. So obviously that's just a wreck and a mess of a sentence. And so I am not trying to sabotage you or anything. I'm just giving you the opportunity to fix it and make it great using these new skills you've just acquired, or maybe skills you already knew if you were already a dialogue expert. So that's my deal. I hope that you feel like you can be better equipped to write your dialogue in the future, and I'm hoping that in your next story that you're writing, your dialogue is off the charts awesome. And if you forget any of these rules, I say again, you can go back to this video and watch it 5,000 times, because I just love you so much that I have made it available to you forever. I love you all very much. I am now going to go home. No, I'm not. I'm going to sit here and grade your stories for like 57 hours. Then I'm going to go home, and then I'm going to go to Jazzercise. I will see your beautiful faces in the very near future, and I already am looking forward to it. Peace out, y'all.